Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EU's Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, CSDDD. What a long name. I welcome you to a 1-hour webinar on this very important topic. Now, my name is Arnie Mielken. I have been in customs and global trade for 20 years. When I say global trade, I mean export control, sanctions, anti-money laundering, and all of that good stuff. All of that stuff to do with due diligence, that's me. So when I see the word due diligence, and I see sustainability, and I see corporate, wow, I'm going to talk about this. Because due diligence, I see everywhere I go in customs, export controls, especially sanctions now, and AML. It's due diligence this, due diligence that. Now we're adding another dimension, which is typical because it is a trend. The European Union has been on a roll. CBAM, deforestation regulation, and now CSDDD. Plus supply chain laws, anti-forced labor laws. This entire prohibition and restriction is, well, is it getting out of hand? We will explore one element of this today in the EU's Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And here is what I have planned for us. Yes, there is a lot of text, okay? But you can always watch this recording on demand, and then you can pause it and you can just revisit it. I've added more words so that you don't need to scribble everything down, and you can then review this slide post this live streaming when you get our support bundle. So what are we trying to achieve in this webinar? This is not a typical light-hearted webinar where we'll give you some facts and then we'll walk away. This is a intense 1-hour training, and you will notice this difference because we've got objectives, learning outcomes, expected outcomes, pauses, checks in, and whatnot. So all you need to do really is sit back, relax, and let it happen. And if you do have a question, and this is the live recording, there's a chat function for you where you can ask that question. We'll collect the question, and then we'll have it as a Q&A document post this webinar. So you can review the answers later. So the more questions you give me in the chat functions, the better the Q&A document we will create post this event will be. Don't hesitate. When you get your question, do ask it in the chat. I would really welcome it. It would make it so much more interactive, and also it'll help me understand where customs and global trade professionals see the challenges. So we have objectives that we want to achieve. Our objectives for this webinar are what? We want to develop a good general knowledge and awareness of the key provisions of the new EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, CSDDD. We want to understand how the need for multinationals, big, large corporate complex companies, to foster sustainable and responsible corporate behavior in companies and their operations and across their global value chain impacts you. I'm assuming you are from a large and corporate company if you're joining this webinar, or you may not be. You may be an SME. You may be someone who supplies services and goods to large and complex companies. Are you impacted by this? You might even think, wait a minute, like the EU Commission. I wrote the EU Commission. I said, hey, can you come on? And they said, but this has nothing to do with customs, global trade, and export controls and sanctions. And I disagreed. I said, no. Do you know that word due diligence in there? Everything we do on a customs, export control, and sanctions perspective is about due diligence. So if we can learn some lesson from this CSDDD, well, we should welcome that, shouldn't we? Anyway, so we are going to look at what the impact of this CSDDD, which aims to address large and complex corporate multinationals, what the impact is for SMEs and those supplying services and goods to them. We need to obviously, as global trade and customs professionals, zoom in on the due diligence requirements in the CSDDD and explore the similarities and differences in the DD requirements of export control, sanctions, and anti-money laundering legislation. I think this will be very, very interesting. So by the end of this webinar, I want us all to be able to better evaluate the impact of the CSDDD on your own supply chain, on our supply chains, enabling our professional expertise and operational effectiveness when we talk about this. As customs, global trade, sanctions, and export control professionals, AML professionals, when people talk to us about CSDDD, I want us to be able to respond competently and efficiently and understand what do we need to do as these professionals, or can we butt out and have nothing to do with this topic at all and push it somewhere up the corporate ladder. The learning topics for today, for this 1 hour, are huge. We're going to do an introduction to CSDDD. We understand the director's goals and objectives. We want to know what the requirements are, an overview of the key provisions and critical articles of CSDDD. We want to talk about compliance strategies, explore the synergies between due diligence in the CSDDD and the due diligence in export control and sanctions and AML. Best practice recommendations on how to comply with DD requirements should also be explored, shouldn't they? I mean, that's what you're here after all, to learn about how do we do this. And we can draw on the existing structure that we have in companies for export controls and sanctions and AML. If we already have a system in place for due diligence for these policy areas, well, then shall we just expand our due diligence efforts into a strategy that encompasses environmental and human rights considerations as well? And finally, we'll look at support tools. Discover the tools available to assist you in meeting the CSDDD obligations. Expected outcome of today: upon completing this webinar, participants will have the overview of the CSDDD, understand the key provisions and essential articles of the CSDDD, identify what due diligence means under this regulation. I won't repeat the name because I'll start to go crazy. And the requirements that companies must adhere to with these regulations. We'll also explore the similarities between the CSDDD due diligence and the due diligence we know from other parts that we are very familiar with. And we grasp the tools that exist to support the due diligence efforts for those that have to deal with it. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. We're going to have 3 parts. Yeah, it's a 1 hour webinar. We're going to have 3 parts. Why? Because it's easy to understand the logic and where we are when we do it like that. It's a funnel approach, so we're going to start with the high-level stuff first. What is it? Why does it matter? Who is it for? And then we're going to drill down into more granular stuff, such as what is the due diligence requirements and what are the synergies between export control, sanctions, and AML. And then finally, we're going to have the practical stuff, the support tools to manage these, and some conclusions and recommendations. As always, you can ask questions in the chat. In between the parts, we'll have a pause and reflect. This is an opportunity for you to pause the recording if you watch this on demand and answer questions that I give you. It is an opportunity to self-check whether you've understood the key points of this part. So after every part, there's a pause for you to think, did I get it? And that answering the questions will help you understand if you can. There's also a reflect, and the reflect means how far are we on the agenda? Are we progressing and meeting all the objectives? And finally, if you are getting this, if you're getting the slides, then there's a quiz of 4 questions where you can test your knowledge. And then there is a task. If you do want to complete it, that's totally optional, obviously. You can send me your reply, and I will reply back with my response, my recommendations, my suggestions. It's just a way for us to interact. We only will have time to deal with this after this webinar, so you've got to check out the slide pack to do the quiz and complete the task. And then you give it back to me, you answer back to me, and I'll feedback. And please note that upon completion of this webinar, participants will be able to access the slides delivered during this webinar. You will be able to download this full recording of this live training delivered right now, what we're doing right now. you'll be able to download a 30-page explainer guide on CSDDD, download the guidance of the EU Commission FAQ, and be able to subscribe to our update service where we'll keep you informed whenever something changes on CSDDD. And please visit customsmanager.org shop to scroll down to support bundle to obtain the support bundle on CSDDD. This part is webinar is part of a free live webinar series that we run every month. Today is about CSDDD, next month is about EUDR, then it's about CBAM, and so on and so on. We have set goals on why we do this, and you can see here the reasons as to why we want to do this. And if you're interested in exploring more about the live webinar series and what our objectives are, reasons for doing that, you can review these slides, and you can see on the slides right now the prominent reasons as to why we're doing what we're doing. These 5 key objectives we have set ourselves to achieve in 2024 to 2025. If you want to know more about what's coming up and to find the schedule and to book, as I said, free of charge, free for all, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, this is free for you every month, 1 hour, just like this. Expert, professional, quick training for anyone. There's the link. Please look at it, bookmark it, book your ticket for the next sessions as well. Thank you. Let's go. You're ready to go? Part 1 of the EU CSDDD talks about introduction, overview of the EU